All right, Zig coming in on the top. Today on the show, we have Robin Hyperius Blake. This is Robin's third time on the show. Robin is a saxophonist, composer, coder, DJ, community organizer, and leader of Hyperius Blake and the Sound Experiment. Robin is a very talented musician and a friend. I got to play in the Sound Experiment for a few months. It was both a challenging and fun hang. Hyperius Blake and the Sound Experiment have a special gig coming up November 8th at the Crobar, Operation Doom, a tribute to MF Doom. It's going to be a super rad night. It's featuring a lot of local hip-hop artists and rappers that jump on, one of which I know for sure is Maddstarr, Quentin, who I've got to work with a lot, actually, through the years. So this will be a really cool night to have his talent shine on top of the Sound Experiment. So it's going to be a very, very fun and special evening. So, the place to be is at the Crobar on November 8th. All right, before we get to this interview, if you hear what you like, if you can like, rate, review, subscribe to the podcast on any of the podcast platforms, it helps me keep talking to cool guests like Robin and sharing their insight with you. So without further ado, this is my conversation with Robin. So Robin, I appreciate you reaching out and taking time to chat with me, as always. And I'm glad to see that you're doing kick-ass things all the time. I wanted to start off by asking you the importance of DJ and the art of being a DJ and how that kind of like fits with being a musician.
Oh, in my opinion?
In your experience? That's I mean, if you give me someone else's opinion, I'd be really impressed.
Well, I guess I can only speak for myself, but okay, yeah. Well, I certainly wouldn't consider myself an expert on the matter personally. I'm definitely a bedroom amateur DJ at best. However, I'm definitely well studied in the art, and I do think that DJing is a valid art form. I do think DJs are musicians. And I do think and know that it's a lot more than just, hitting buttons and turning knobs. There is a bunch of that, right? Obviously, but there's a lot more that goes into it. And just like with anything else, you can take it as seriously as you want to, or you can be as lackadaisical about it as you want to. And there's nothing wrong with that. There are plenty of DJs who incorporate music theory into what they do. And there's plenty of folks who just go by ear, and there's plenty of tools and apps and things built into DJ software to help you along no matter what skill level you're at, musically. So it's definitely accessible and it's for everybody. And I feel like I'm rambling off the point a little bit.
Because I think that's a good point to bring up because because I've done some DJ gigs. I've done a fair amount of DJ gigs, but not in the sense of like a real DJ that's scratching and like blending tracks and in a club or anything like that. But like the programs I would work with, they had the opportunity or the ability to put something in a key and change the key. So you had to know what key is, and you can slow down the tempo to mix it to match the BPM. So I think if there is. Like, it's very much a musical, and it sounds dumb because it's DJ. Of course, it's a musical profession, but a musician's, like, profession in a way, too, because there's stuff you got to know to make it work, even if you don't know it. Like...
Yeah, contextually, you have to understand, like, okay, the key of a song is changing the pitch,
Right.
Whether you know, like, what the A minor, the F sharp minor means or whatever is a different story. But yeah, context is definitely very important.
For sure. And it's like, I don't know, it's different coming from the world of like guitar where everyone who's good at guitar, you get told like, yeah, man, they couldn't even read. They didn't know anything about that instrument, which isn't true. like Jimi Hendrix knows how to play in key, man. He knows what key it is. Like, right. But when you're fed that mythos and you're trying to figure this instrument out, you're like, I don't need to, like, but I kind of bring that example up because I've been thinking about it with talking to people who are learning guitar and like how important it is to be like, no, it's cool to learn how things work in theory and like, the practicality of that doesn't take away from the magic. That was the kind of trip I was on thinking about that.
I like that.
Right? I don't know. It's just weird. Like, especially, I don't know if it's the same with like saxophone or any other instrument other than like the guitar in a way, because it's got that kind of just like mythos behind it, which makes guitar players really bad at reading music.
I think it goes across the board, honestly. Yeah, and I think with anything, demystifying something only makes it more magical, because then you have the ability to communicate and understand on a deeper level, right?
Right.
I mean, knowing the theory of anything, I think, is important if you want to craft, using that. It's like if you don't know how to make a cake, but you know that it takes flour, sugar, and egg, well, you can play around with that and get something. But if you make a delicious cake, you won't be able to recreate it because you don't know what you were doing in the first place. So next to a chef, who like understands how to make a basic cake and then how to freak that and do it different types of ways and then incorporate that knowledge into cheesecakes and things like that. It's just like different. It's a different level, and one isn't necessarily better than the other. It's just more, you know. It really depends on how deep you want to go as a musician, as an artist, as a creative in that way. It's about depth. It's not necessarily about, an echelon or a ladder.
Right, and the knowledge of it opens that ladder. It opens the gate to the door that keeps the ladder there, so you can choose to go wherever you want to go with it. But it's just knowing how to get to that ladder. If we keep going with this metaphor,
no, for sure. No, look, I got one for you. It's like you can climb the ladder to the ceiling, but if you know how to unlock the hatch that gets you into the attic, there's a whole new world up there. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's well said. So I guess
I
think so. Yeah, because it's showing that you found the thing to get to the thing, and it can either open up the thing or you can bash your head against it until you learn to read the hatch or read the sign that says "flip the hatch" or whatever.
Or just bash the hatch open. I mean,
or eventually you're going to, right?
Tactic. Yeah, right.
That's just the more like, I guess, punk rock route to it.
Hey,
So what captured your like creative like curiosity first? Was DJing there, or was it playing and composing?
Oh, just in general, like in life?
Yeah.
Well, I guess music was just always a part of my life growing up. I had a violin in my hands when I was 8, and I was playing in the school orchestra, and I grew up around a lot of gospel and like old Caribbean music, Caribbean gospel, reggae, R&B, things like that. I didn't really listen to mainstream music until I was like 7 or 8 and able to access that by choice or kind of, peek into what my parents were, listening to, what was going on. And I think that's when my musical interest really kicked in, because I was hearing a lot of sounds and grooves and tonalities that were sort of new to me, combined with having an instrument. I would definitely say just the combination of exposure plus, the beginning of learning music definitely put me there.
So was it at this point at 7 or 8, is it still violin?
Yeah, just the violin.
And I find that like fascinating that you can remember the point in which you've like opened up the door to pop music or music that was around you that wasn't from like family music. You know what I mean? Like I can't recall that for myself. Like I don't know when like I was just kind of always hearing everything around. Like I could point out more specifically at that time what music I was growing up around in home, but like as far as being exposed to other stuff, I really can't recall until like high school. So I find that fascinating too. What were some of those artists that were piquing your interest at that point?
So definitely Jill Scott, Alicia Keys. Funny enough, I was poking around on a piano at that time, and I remembered the melody to her song Karma, which is an A minor. It's really simple in hindsight. And I was just playing around because, I didn't have a piano at home or a keyboard or anything. So I was like, that was kind of my first or second time really messing with one. And I was scratching out the melody to the song. And the orchestra director walked up and she was like, "What is that?" And I was like, "Oh, it's an Alicia Keys song." Like, and at the time I had no idea like what I was doing or that was even like a thing, transcribing. And she was like, "Oh, that's really like, we should use that." And so she ended up making an arrangement of that song for the second and third and fourth graders to play.
Whoa, that's cool. That's like,
yeah,
sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say like a way to like just the per happenstance to just be like supported like that. You know what I mean? That definitely like from that point on, did like kind of composition in that whole world open up because of that?
I would more say the possibility for it opened up. I guess I realized at that point, like, oh, you can like not only like, transcribe and copy, but you can write and you can rearrange. And I just, the possibility sparked, but I never really pursued it, at that age. I was just kind of like playing hot cross buns and like happy to be there,
Yeah. It's funny. I think like Alicia Keys, that it was either first record or something or second. It's like songs in the key of A minor or something like.
Oh yeah. So I don't think all the songs are in A minor. I think it's a play on her name being Alicia Keys.
Okay.
Beginning with A.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, because I can't remember the songs that are specifically on that album, but like some of her bangers are definitely in a major key. So that, I don't know if that's a through line.
They could be in C. I don't know.
Oh, that's valid. Oh, but to continue answering your question from earlier, at that time I was really getting into a lot of neo soul, and actually that's when hip hop started to appear in my life because I was hanging out with the older kids, so like they were listening to, I guess, what you would consider old school hip hop at the time, and I was just, being exposed. Wasn't really getting into it myself, but it was definitely ingraining itself in my life. I think any hip hop and rap I was taking in as a young kid was just like what was on the radio or what was popular at the time. Like, oh God, now I'm thinking like Lil Romeo. Does that age me? I mean, here we are, Lil Bow Wow, Sierra, like definitely, Paul Wall, just kind of throwing names out there, like as I age up, a lot of popular music, but also on the other side, Grover Cleveland, Tracy Chapman, the class, the standards, a lot of Motown, Dreamgirls came out. That movie played a big role, told me what a musical was. And then I started getting into that whole thing and that rabbit hole that never ends,
Which is beautiful part of that. That's that ladder taking us through, right?
I mean, maybe it's a staircase, huh? Did you kind of just fall down? But yeah, my journey definitely wasn't like streamlined. I just kind of kept opening myself up to more things, and through my friends and through experiences, just kind of, formulated my musical identity. But bringing it around to hip hop, I'd say that part of myself definitely started solidifying when I started high school. I was into Adult Swim and anime, and I had that whole aesthetic going on. So I was watching Cowboy Bebop and Samurai Champloo, as it was happening. And those soundtracks definitely, that's when I discovered New Jabez, and that's really when the spiral into I want to do music for the rest of my life began, because I was just like, what is this like? What does this sound like? It's like hip hop, but there's this like, I didn't even have the words for it at the time, but like an orchestral element to it, the arrangement of the tracks, me hearing music in a certain way, that stuff just really appealed to me. And of course, Cowboy Bebop,
right,
Tank, Jazz, that whole thing, that whole trilogy, Space Dandy, all of that music.
That music, and it's, I think at that age too, that be kind of bought in by a story and like a visual element, and have like this amazing music on top of it, right? Like listening, I forget what anime it was. I was listening to bits from the soundtrack. Trigun. It was Trigun. I was like, holy shit, this soundtrack holds up. This is like really fucking sick. That or like Foolie Cooley and like Cowboy Bebop, all those anime that were on that Adult Swim like block, Samurai Champloo, like it's all so good and it holds up by itself. And it's like you could take it away from the original material and still be like, this is like encapsulating.
No, 100%.
So at that point with like, because I think at that age too, like music hits differently. We're going through changes and trying to figure ourselves out, what we're going to do, latching on to any shred of identity. You know what I mean? Like trying to like anything that you're like, anything I at that point was remotely like okay at, and like I'm like maybe that's the thing I do in like 3 years when I'm not in school anymore, you know?
Oh my God, I had too many of that. I mean, like fashion design, video games, like game design. I mean, doing the HTML on MySpace and whatnot. Like,
Yeah.
like what is this? Like this coding thing, getting into computer science. Music didn't even necessarily occur to me at first. I was following so many other avenues. I was in theater, stuff like that. I totally vibe with that.
Like no, it's like if the music doesn't date us, the music we bring up, the MySpace definitely will. Oh my gosh, I remember trying to deck out the MySpace. Does yours still exist? Can you go find it?
Oh, no one's exists. They all got nuked.
Really?
A while ago.
Oh
yeah.
no.
I mean, MySpace still exists, but yeah, everyone's original profile is definitely gone.
Whoa, bummer. Rip. I didn't know that. I thought about that a while ago. I'm like, I should look it up. I'm like, no, it's okay.
Nah, it's definitely gone. But I think that's still a valid website for musicians. Like, I'm not entirely sure, but I know it's still up, and like there's enough users. And it's that's traffic.
That's something. Like, but anyway, so like, kind of taking like this inspiration from like music from like anime that like kind of put this narrative and like was shifting how you looked at music. I guess like what like kind of hip hop artists were sticking out to you that were kind of doing the same thing?
So at the time, a lot of Flying Lotus, MF Doom, obviously, Jay Dilla, New Jabez. I was getting into that whole realm. I guess, lo-fi hip hop before people were calling it lo-fi hip hop. And then on the other side too, like Kanye West, at that time when it was okay to like Kanye West. And Andre 3000, Outkast, Big Boy, that whole thing. And just a lot of alternative rap too, things I can't even remember now, at the time. But I was also listening to like a lot of Japanese city pop. And video game and anime soundtracks kind of dominated my life too. So I definitely had like a bunch of that grand orchestral thematic music in my life, counterbalanced with like beats, lots of beats, lots of world beats, lots of hip hop, lots of rap and different styles of rap. So that was kind of my world, definitely.
And like, are you playing saxophone, or are you when you go into high school? Or are you still?
Yes.
Okay, so when
so I stopped playing violin in the 6th grade, and I played bass because I was the only person who was big enough to use the fretboard.
Okay.
So I played bass in middle school, and then freshman year of high school, I didn't do any music. I like stopped doing orchestra, and I just kind of like hung out. I was still doing a bunch of stuff, but I just wasn't playing any instruments that year. And then sophomore year, I joined a band, and they needed a saxophone player, so that's what I picked up.
Did it like come easier than other instruments at that point, or because like that going from strings to or going just for anything that's not, from a they're both not fretted, violin and bass. But from going something, you know what I mean? I was trying to
strings to woodwinds.
From strings to woodwinds, but also just like different. Your fingers are doing completely something different, and you're breathing into it. Was it easy to switch? Did it kind of open itself up easier to you than violin or bass?
I wouldn't say the act was foreign to me. Maybe the delusion of youth made it so that I just wasn't thinking too deeply about, like, that. I was just like, oh, it's just like an instrument. Like, the concept of blowing into an instrument wasn't foreign to me because we had played recorder, in like the third grade, and I kept my recorder, and it was a thing that I like toyed with, throughout my youth. So the concept of blowing into something and like, the base mechanics of it didn't like scare me off. And really, to me, it just felt like a big old kazoo, which hasn't really changed in a way. But, I just, there was no weight to it. It was that serious. It was like, oh, I'm doing this because all my friends are in bands. So like, now I get to hang out with all my friends all the time, and making music is fun. Marching around is good for you. So,
which I mean, ideally, that's what it all should be. This is fun, and like it's kind of it's healthy. We're marching around.
Yeah, like it's like, oh, something to do, camaraderie, and like learning songs was fun. I didn't know any theory, or I didn't know necessarily what notes were, but like we were all learning songs together, and it was fun. So,
well, I guess when did that like, kind of like, when did theory and like kind of diving in deeper to the mechanics of music happen? Was that during high school, or was that a post high school thing?
So, funny story. My first ever DAW was Finale.
Okay.
But I mean, I knew what notes were, and I could like identify notes on a staff because, like, at this point I had been in concert band, and I could like read without help in a way, but I didn't know like anything about music theory, or just like the world of it beyond just like reading what was on a page. So I was just really into like trying to read harder and harder music because that was all I really knew, at the time. I didn't even really know of making beats and this and that. So I got my hands on Finale, and I was, I guess, making beats and or composing in Finale when I was in high school, older in high school. And I was just like showing off my pieces to friends. And then senior year, we wanted to enter the talent show because we were all like, we're about to graduate, and it's the first year that they're doing like a free, form talent show. And we ended up doing a Beyonce arrangement of Sweet Dreams, which is not a cover of the Sweet Dreams most people are thinking of.
Yeah.
It's her own tune. And we won, and it was pretty good. And I mean, the instrumentation was very wonky and nonsensical, but like I did arrange that in hindsight, and I did arrange it using Finale. So
I remember. Well, I mean, so very at the end of the whole high school career, it's kind of like, oh shit, this is a thing. Which like, and then that's, I mean, did you right out of high school? Did you go to CSU?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right out of high school.
So that's where we met.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, like, was it that incident that was like, okay, I'm gonna dive into this deeper?
No, I still didn't really think about it as anything that was special. Yeah, I mean, if I'm going to be completely honest, I didn't think arranging or composing music was a special skill until maybe like 4 years ago. Like I really just, my whole journey with that was just like, oh, well, I'm able to do this because, it comes naturally to me, like putting music to paper, or like communicating music on paper. And it was sort of just like, I felt like it was a utility skill that I had that everybody had, but they didn't want to do because it was tedious. I even had somebody tell me once, like, oh, you arrange music, that's a lot of data entry. And, I was like, okay, that's shade, but like, whatever, I don't mind doing it.
It is definitely tedious. It definitely is tedious. And that kind of goes to the other conversation we had with like kind of coding and music, as far as like just the data entry point of composition.
Bury that.
We'll put a pin in that. But so to kind of unpin something else, as far as Doom, but Doom was clearly a very inspiring figure for you.
Yeah, for sure. I would definitely say the Mad Villain era was like peak like Doom for me per se.
Was definitely like, because I got introduced to Doom through Coda, and like I remember what's the accordion tune?
Yes.
Yeah.
That is Mad Villain.
So like that's the album, because it's weird, like kind of, and I'm sure you've experienced this too. It's weird, kind of like being in the time right before streaming was kind of the thing for everybody, but like having the iPod shuffle and putting like the albums you would rip from the library on there. So like, for a while, certain artists I
was
didn't
a
know.
pirate. I was torn.
Yeah, yarg. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I never had a computer good enough to figure out the pirating technique, so I would just go to the library and rip them. So I didn't know more than like what was available to me there. So I didn't know if like certain people had more than this record, or just whatever popped up. That was kind of like my knowledge for them.
Don't miss those days.
I know, which is like, it's so sick. Someone could be like, "Hey, have you ever heard of Frank Zappa or something?" And you're just like, 97 albums. Oh gosh, when do I get the time?
Oh yeah. When do I get the money?
Yeah. But now, yeah, that too. Like back then, because you're like, oh, I guess I'll start in the middle. Yeah. But like, so that's the cool thing about streaming for sure. Especially with like a legacy artist. But okay, so like, what brought about this show that you guys have going on? Why did you guys want to do like a whole? I shouldn't say why, because it's clearly why MF Doom's sick. But like, why? How did the planets align to kind of put together this performance?
So basically, I've been, talking shit this whole time about wanting to turn my band in more of a hip hop direction, but having concerns around that, right? And I have been working through it, and I just got to a point where I decided I just kind of want to step out and do what I want. And so this is sort of one of those first big steps into kind of just doing what I want and making everyone eat it, or having them vibe with it.
That's so I find it interesting, because like with playing in your band and experiencing how everything works, I don't get how I don't see why that would be a problem, not just to dive in, because the crew you bring around is always so multi-talented and like open to like so much different music. But has this been like just a thing within your own head, like to prove this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, it's definitely been like this recurring narrative just within myself that I've been battling. Self-doubt is really something. And so dealing with that, and asking myself, am I only worth something because of the value I provide to other people, or is my worth inherent to me and my experience? And then coming to really realize that other people's commentary on my experience is irrelevant, and it's my duty to share my own story, my own perspective, especially because I feel that I come from just such a, unique place. And that's something that I denied for many years in trying to be normal or blend in or not draw attention to myself, when, everything about me just kind of is the antithesis to that.
Holy shit, that's a heavy ass question too. Where does your value, like that is definitely like, shit, I don't know if I've ever thought about anything like that.
Yeah, you should, just sit down one day on the porch and think about that,
Turn off the recorder, and then we're going to get into this. Holy shit.
But really, to tie it back to, the music and the hip hop and the thing, I just, people especially because, you know, we had come from music school or whatever, people always respected me in the context of jazz arrangement or, you know, classical composition and things like that. And, you know, the subtle elitism is like, oh, well, pop music is easy, or like hip hop isn't music, or like da, 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 you know. And so those seeds do implant themselves, and they do grow over time unless you weed them out. And, you know, I just never really took the time to weed them out because maybe part of me thought that mentality was useful, and maybe it was useful at one point, right? But as I started really growing into who I was and who I wanted to be, it became untenable to balance that. And not just with music, but in life, I began to, you know, sort of reap that from myself, and, you know, open myself up to, okay, I'm going to stand in my truth, and like, this is who I am and what I like and what I do. And so with my writing, with the band, you know, it became a little less jazz, a little more R&B, you know, and then like a little less that and a little more neo soul. And so now we've finally settled on the hip hop, future soul, jazz-ish, I like to say, you know, because like, is it jazz? Well, it has seventh chords. Like, you tell me. I don't know.
You know, but like, I think it's interesting with like kind of the movement of jazz in a way, like, or someone's like conception or like understanding of jazz. So I do these weird DJ gigs at nursing homes. I've told you about this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So like a song like the song Street Life, right? Very jazzy in the progression by the Crusaders. And like, it's a very jazzy tune, right? But it's got that pop.
Awesome tune.
Yeah, it's got that pop and that disco beat that people like. They don't necessarily. It's not. It is jazz, but people don't like. They don't react to it as if it's considered jazz. And I think like, I think the movement you just described and how you're approaching into hip hop makes sense, because it's like you learn one style of a thing and then you move to another style, and then it all blends together in whatever Robin's going to make in this case, or whatever Robin and the crew are going to make. Like, and like, I think that's the beauty of learning any skill. That kind of goes back to the whole idea of the baker and the cake, right? So you can make any flavor or any styling of cake once you learn the recipe. And I think with genre, music style, like, that is just that. Now it's like a carrot cheesecake cake. like
that'd be interesting combination.
Yeah.
Carrot, I'm into that. But that is a really valid point you make. And for me, it's interesting because my writing was confirming what my ear already knows. You know, I came into music school able to play hip hop, R&B, and soul and gospel because I grew up in the church and I grew up around those sounds. You know, and I had that in my household. So like, I didn't have to learn how to swing eighth notes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, just like, yeah, jazz feels like this, and like, you know, and hip hop, which is based upon jazz, has swung 16th notes. So it's like that, you know, the concept of getting funky or like laying back on the beat, like all of that was just intrinsic to my DNA, really. So going through school and getting the ability to write at a high level allowed me to then be able to convey those ideas in a way that musicians could instantly grasp, so that people who don't necessarily listen to hip hop or listen to soul can still play those things with me, because I'm able to communicate a feeling in a tangible way for the most part, you know?
Right. But that's the skill set of like being able to compose what's in your head, right? Musically, and be able to explain it, but also like, shit, if we can do that emotionally too, what a different place we would be in for so many people. Like,
right.
You know,
those things are connected though. You know?
I totally believe that. So I guess like on a side question, I guess diving into that, how have you found that they're connected?
How have I found that what is connected specifically?
Well, being able to express oneself, like,
oh yes,
yes.
I mean, it might almost be one-to-one, to be honest, just because you have to take something that seems fully formed, right? Like when you have a feeling or an emotion or a thought, you take it for what it is usually. But then you have to pick it apart and really look at things deeper and be unafraid to isolate, things from each other and, rearrange things and reinterpret things, just like you have to reinterpret your own perspective, because what you think isn't necessarily right and what you believe isn't necessarily true. So, when you hear a piece of music or you have a musical idea, that's not it. It's not done. It's just an idea, just like an emotion, just like a thought. It's just an idea. And how you manipulate, convey, and carry those ideas. Yeah, I think it's a one-to-one relationship, certainly.
I mean, that's fascinating. That's really cool. Like, because I've had this conversation before with people at work, like how kind of baffling it is as far as like what music is someone's emotion spilled out on a page for us to hear. But like if we can read everything like that, how great would we all be at understanding each other, which is a crazy kind of abstract thought. But listening to what you just kind of explained as a composer and like as someone who has to express that and work with other people to get your vision and your emotion across, I can see how that's a one-to-one ratio of like how the two collide. That's really cool.
Yeah. Right? Music is a form of communication and a form of connection, and I utilize it as such. So diving into Operation Doomsday,
which is so sick. Like, it's going to be a super sick show. But like, as far as like, are you, is it, because there's multiple acts on it, and like, is it all just like, is it an original kind of twist on Doom tunes? Is it like your stuff kind of inspired, combined with like covers, or what will the show kind of entail?
So pretty much as it says, it is a tribute to MF Doom. So we're straight covers, but because I'm in charge, there's not necessarily going to be anything straight about it. It's gonna be, the tunes as you recognize them. I didn't add anything crazy. I pretty much, at least what I wrote, I stuck to what is on the track. But we have a super band in a way. So it is Hyperius Blake and the Sound Experiment, but I brought in some guest rappers who are going to come and cover about a third of the set. So it's going to be a mix of instrumentals and covered tunes with vocals.
They got Maddstarr on it. Quentin.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Quentin's
got Maddstarr.
Got that.
Some other special guests.
Yeah. Who else is on it? I just remember Quentin being on it.
So yeah, Quentin on it, big Doom fan. I got DJ Red Eye to, set the tone before and in the middle and after. Very excited for that. And just some people that I'm going to keep under my hat, just some local folks that I want to bring out and like surprise everybody with. But they're definitely hip hop artists that I respect. And when we release the updated version of the flyer, it will, have all the people on there that you'll be able to see. But I want to build a little suspense, Okay.
All right. Cool. I'm glad you got Maddstarr on that. Like, Quentin's got that low voice that's like perfect. And that's, I know we've been talking about it, but just to plug it whilst talking about it, it's Friday, November 8th at the Crobar.
Yes, Friday, November 8th at Crobar. Doors are at 8. We will start hitting at 9. The show's just going to kind of go straight through. I definitely recommend you show up in that 8 to 9 doors period, though, because we're going to start hard and, kind of keep it going. So if you don't want to miss anything, definitely get your tickets in advance when you can and show up on time. We're having a pop-up kitchen. For those of you who've been to the Creation Festival, you guys know that food there is top tier. Everyone who's gone pretty much tells me like, oh, that sandwich changed my life. And it'll be like 3 years later. So that's King Margot, a friend of mine. They are going to debut as Down the Way. kitchen, and I'm very excited for that and for them. And they're gonna, bring their special gluten-free, vegan-friendly brand of soul food to the show. And it's gonna be dope. 2 hours of doom and dilla and hip hop and vibes like that. The band is insane. I mean, I think it's like a 10, 11 piece.
Oh my God. How's that going to fit on the stage? And that's not
We've
going to be.
discussed it. We don't know. Yeah, we don't know. We've like discussed configurations. I mean, I've seen like 10 pieces at Crobar.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely seen it. So like it's doable, and the horn players in my band are used to squeezing anyway. So
that's going to be
like,
so sick.
Yeah, the logistics, I'm the king of logistics. I love that stuff. So we're going to figure it out, and it's going to be great. Definitely, got to find a Doom mask or make one. That's been on my agenda for a little while.
What is it? Yeah, I don't know. Like, I saw at a convention, at a Comic-Con I went to with Cody, this guy who made like metal Doom masks. He made a bunch of stuff too, like 3D printed all this shit. I think Cody took his card. If I can, I'll try to see if I can get that card, or at least the information on it, and send it to you.
Yeah, I would love that. I also know somebody with a 3D printer because I'm into cosplay, so
okay,
I have the things. Yeah, but also that costs money. So like, if I'm gonna spend money anyway, maybe I should have somebody do it. But I'm gonna see. Definitely throw me the card.
Okay, yeah, I'll dig for that. Well, Robin, thanks so much for chatting with me and reaching out. And I'm glad to like I said at the beginning, I'm always glad to like plug what my friends are doing, and always good to catch up. So I appreciate it, man.
I really appreciate it from you too, and I'm excited, to talk about the show and talk about hip hop and music and all that stuff, But yeah, Friday, November 8th at Crobar, definitely come through. You can find it probably on my band's Instagram, Maddstarr's, mine, DJ Red Eye. It'll be up all over, especially by the time this gets posted officially. So
For sure. Awesome. Anything else to plug while we're at it?
No, honestly, that was that was my goal, and we achieved it. So yeah, come celebrate Doom with us.
Yo, Spike Spiegel here. You just listened to Zig at the Gig podcast. Keep riding the bebop. See you, Space Cowboy. Bang.